I cut contact with my father after his girlfriend humiliated me at a wedding. So I'm Clara, 32F, and I've got one hell of a messed up family situation. Honestly, I never thought I'd be sharing this story with anyone, but things have gone so sideways that I need some outside perspective. My relationship with my dad, Ben, 58M, has always been complicated, to say the least. But what happened last year at my cousin's wedding? That was the tipping point. Let me take you back a bit, though. My parents, Ben and Mary, 60F, seemed like your typical happy couple when I was a kid. They met in college, my mom was all about her literature degree, and my dad was the big-shot business guy. They got married right after graduation, and a few years later, I came along. From the outside, we probably looked like the perfect family. But even as a kid, I noticed the cracks. I remember these weird, tense dinners when my dad would just sit there silent after coming home from work. He was always working late at his marketing firm, climbing that corporate ladder. Meanwhile, my mom stayed home with me, and she tried her best, but looking back now, I can tell she was always kind of sad. I didn't get it back then, but now I know why. When I was 10, everything fell apart. One day, I came home from school to find my mom crying in the kitchen. You ever walk into a room and immediately know something is wrong? Yeah, it was like that. She was sitting at the table, just staring at the floor with tears streaming down her face. I was too young to really understand what was happening, but that's when she told me Dad had been cheating on her with his secretary. A much younger one, too. The divorce that followed was a disaster. My mom was wrecked, but she held it together for me. Dad? He moved out but still tried to act like everything was fine. He'd take me out for dinner once a week, come to my soccer games and piano recitals, like he was still super dad. But it was always about him. He'd ask me about school, sure, but the conversation would somehow always circle back to his work, his new apartment, or whatever latest hobby he was into. I guess I should have known then that Dad wasn't really interested in my life. I was just an accessory to his. As I got older, I noticed something else. There was always a new woman in his life. Every few months, it was like, "Oh, Clara, this is Sarah, she's in her 20s and super into yoga," or "Meet Amanda, she loves hiking." It didn't seem that weird at first. I mean, Dad was handsome and charming, so I figured it was just how divorced dads were. But then, when I was 15, he introduced me to Lisa, 28F. She was only 13 years older than me. 13 years. I remember thinking, what the hell, Dad? Lisa tried to act all friendly, bonding with me over dumb stuff like boy bands and movies, but it just felt wrong. Like, you're closer to my age than his, what are you even doing here? Thankfully, that relationship didn't last long, but it set a pattern. Dad kept dating women way younger than him, and I just started dreading those dinner dates more and more. By the time I was 18 and heading off to college, Dad had moved on to yet another woman. This time it was Candace, 25F. At first, I didn't think much of it. She seemed different. More put together? Like she wasn't just some fling. But that was the problem. She wasn't. She stuck around. I went off to college, trying to build my own life away from all the drama, but every time I came home, it was like walking into a whole new world. Candace had completely taken over Dad's life, and mine too, apparently. I'll never forget one Thanksgiving break, when I came home and found out that my childhood bedroom had been turned into a home gym. Yep, all my stuff, my posters, my books, the little things I'd collected over the years, were stuffed into boxes and shoved into the attic without even telling me. I remember standing in the doorway, just staring at this treadmill where my bed used to be, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. When I confronted Dad about it, he looked genuinely confused, like I was the one being unreasonable. "You're in college now," he said. "You don't need the room anymore." That was the first time I realized how much things had changed. I wasn't a priority in his life anymore. Candace was. And she made it clear that I was just a guest in my own home. After college, I moved back home for a bit while I was job hunting. That's when things really started going downhill with Candace. She acted like I was overstaying my welcome, making snide comments about how long I planned on living there and how I needed to grow up and get my own place. And Dad, instead of sticking up for me, he just agreed with her, like it hurt so much. This was my dad, and he was siding with some woman over me. The final blow came one night when I overheard them talking about me. I was upstairs, and they didn't know I could hear them. Candace was complaining about how I was cramping their style, and they couldn't be themselves with me around. Then, Dad's voice cut through the air. "I know, babe. We'll figure out how to get her moved out soon." I remember just standing there, frozen, like, is this real? Did my dad just say that? The next day I confronted him about it, and of course he tried to backpedal. "Oh, Clara, you misunderstood. It's not what it sounded like, blah, blah, blah." But I wasn't buying it. I packed my stuff and moved out within a week. After that, things were never the same. My relationship with Dad became this distant, awkward thing. We'd see each other occasionally, but it was always with Candace hovering around, making little digs at me, my weight, my job, whatever she could think of. And every time Dad would just laugh it off or tell me to lighten up. I tried talking to him about it, but he'd just dismiss me, saying, "That's just how Candace is. She doesn't mean anything by it." But it did mean something. It meant that my feelings didn't matter to him as much as keeping her happy. Then came the wedding. My cousin's wedding. The one where everything finally blew up. I brought Joe, 30M, my boyfriend, and we were having a good time, until Candace got drunk. She started comparing herself to the other women at the wedding, including me. She was bragging about how she could still fit into her high school jeans, and how some people, meaning me, had clearly let themselves go. I was so angry, but I didn't want to cause a scene at the wedding. I pulled Dad aside and told him that Candace's behavior was completely unacceptable. I thought, finally, this is the moment he'll see how awful she's been. But nope. Instead, he defended her, telling me I needed to lighten up, and that she was just joking. That was it for me. I told him I was done with both of them, walked out of the wedding, and haven't spoken to him since. Until now. So after I cut ties with my dad, things were quiet for a while. Too quiet, if I'm being honest. I didn't expect him to suddenly show up or anything, but it felt weird to just not talk to him anymore. There was this nagging feeling in the back of my mind, like maybe I'd hear from him at some point, but I wasn't going to be the one to make that call. Life kept moving, though. Joe and I started planning our engagement party, and honestly, it was something I'd been looking forward to for months. We'd been together for years, and it just felt like the right time to take the next step. We rented out this cute little venue downtown, invited all our friends and family. Well, not all family. My dad and Candace? Yeah, they weren't on the guest list. There was no way I was going to deal with that drama on such an important day. The party itself was amazing at first. Joe and I had been working hard on it, and seeing everything come together felt great. There was food, drinks, music, all the people we cared about. It was perfect. We were in the middle of taking pictures with friends when, out of nowhere, I saw him. My dad. He just walked in like he was invited, with that same cocky smirk on his face that I hadn't seen in months. My stomach dropped. I was pissed. This was my engagement party, and he just showed up like nothing ever happened between us. And of course, he wasn't alone. He brought Candace with him. You ever get that feeling when you just know something's about to go wrong? Yeah, that was me in that moment. I could feel the tension in the air, and I wasn't the only one. Joe grabbed my hand and whispered, "Do you want me to say something?" I was ready to storm over there and kick them both out, but part of me wanted to hear what the hell they thought they were doing there. So I told Joe to wait, and we walked over to them. Before I could even get a word out, my dad started talking. "Clara, I know I wasn't invited, but I needed to see you. There's something we need to talk about." I didn't care what he had to say. I was so angry that I could feel my hands shaking. "Are you serious right now?" I said, barely holding it together. "You just show up here after everything that happened like this is okay?" He tried to calm me down, but it was Candace who spoke next, and her voice was dripping with the same smug attitude she always had. "Clara, we didn't come here to cause problems. We just wanted to congratulate you two." Congratulate us? Like, no, that wasn't going to fly. I turned to Joe, and he could see I was about to lose it. I felt my heart racing, and everything around me just started to blur because all I could think about was how dare they show up, acting like they had any right to be there. But here's where it gets wild. Just as I was about to tell them to leave, Dad blurts out, "Candace and I broke up." Wait, what? My head was spinning. This wasn't what I expected him to say, at all. I blinked at him, not even sure if I'd heard him right. "You broke up?" I repeated, not really believing it. He nodded, and suddenly the cocky smirk was gone. He actually looked sad, or maybe just exhausted. "Yeah, it's been rough. We've been fighting a lot, and honestly, after you cut contact, it made me think about a lot of things." Candace rolled her eyes, and I could tell she wasn't happy about being there or hearing him admit they broke up. She didn't say anything, but the way she folded her arms and started looking around the room said it all. She didn't want to be there anymore. "I know this isn't the place or the time," Dad continued, "but I couldn't wait any longer. I've been wanting to talk to you for months, but I didn't know how." I stood there, completely caught off guard. I mean, part of me was still furious, but now I was also confused. They broke up? That was the last thing I expected. I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. Joe squeezed my hand, giving me that little bit of strength to keep my cool. Okay, fine, I finally said. You want to talk? Let's talk, but not here. Not now. Dad nodded, looking relieved that I didn't just blow up at him in front of everyone. I get it. We'll leave. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say to that. He'd never apologized to me before. Not like that, anyway. So I just nodded, and they turned to leave. Candace didn't say another word, which was probably for the best. As they walked out, I realized how much the atmosphere at the party had shifted. People were whispering, and I could feel the eyes on me, but I didn't care. I needed a minute to just breathe. Joe led me outside, away from everyone, and I just stood there, leaning against the wall, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. He actually apologized, I said, more to myself than to Joe. Yeah, Joe replied, looking just as surprised as I was. I didn't see that coming. Neither did I. I mean, this was the same guy who had sided with Candace every single time, no matter how badly she treated me. And now they were broken up, and he was apologizing? It didn't make sense. But then again, what did I expect? We stayed outside for a few more minutes while I calmed down. The party was still going on inside, and I didn't want to ruin the night for everyone else. But part of me couldn't let go of what had just happened. My dad, showing up like that, telling me they'd broken up. It felt like some weird dream I couldn't wake up from. Eventually, Joe and I went back inside. I plastered on a smile for the rest of the night, trying to push the whole thing to the back of my mind. But even as the party wound down and we said goodbye to our friends, I couldn't stop thinking about what was coming next. I knew I'd have to talk to Dad again, and I knew it wasn't going to be an easy conversation. Update 1. Alright, so after that whole scene at my engagement party, I couldn't stop thinking about my dad. Him showing up uninvited, dropping the news about his breakup with Candace, and then apologizing? I was all over the place. I mean, who does that? But now I had to figure out what to do next. Joe kept saying I should give Dad a chance, maybe hear him out, but I wasn't sure. A few days after the party, I got a text from Dad. Can we meet for coffee? I really want to talk. I just stared at my phone, not knowing how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part of me was curious. What could he possibly have to say after everything? So, after a full day of going back and forth, I agreed to meet him. We picked this quiet little cafe near my apartment, and I made sure Joe knew exactly where I was. You know, just in case things got weird. Walking into that cafe felt like I was walking into a trap, honestly. I spotted Dad sitting by the window, looking older? Like, I don't know how to explain it, but he seemed different. Less confident, maybe? He smiled when he saw me, but it wasn't that smug grin he usually had. It looked like he was actually nervous. I sat down, and we did that awkward, "How have you been?" small talk for a minute. I wasn't really interested in chatting about the weather, though. I just wanted to know what he had to say. So, after a few sips of my coffee, I just cut straight to the point. "What do you want, Dad?" He looked down at his coffee, and for a moment I thought he might back out of whatever he was planning to say. But then he sighed and said, "I've been thinking a lot since the wedding, Clara. About you, about Candace, about everything." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. This wasn't the first time he'd tried to talk to me, and usually it ended up being all about him. But I stayed quiet and let him keep going. "Cutting you out of my life was the biggest mistake I ever made," he admitted, his voice shaking a little. "I was so wrapped up in my relationship with Candace that I didn't see what it was doing to you." Now this is where I was thrown off. My dad never ever admitted to making mistakes, not once. I think I sat there with my mouth open for a second before I snapped back into reality. "I don't think you realize just how much damage you caused, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't just ignore me. You let her humiliate me over and over, and you acted like I didn't even matter." I know, he said quickly, his hands shaking as he picked up his cup. "I messed up, Clara. I don't know, blind. I thought I needed Candace, and I didn't see what was happening. But trust me, when you cut me off, it hit me hard." I just looked at him, trying to figure out if he was being genuine. I mean, my dad was the king of excuses, always trying to smooth things over without actually fixing anything. But there was something different in his voice this time. He took a deep breath and leaned forward, looking me right in the eye. "Candace is pregnant." I felt like the ground had just dropped out from under me. Pregnant? That was the last thing I expected him to say. My brain couldn't process it. "Wait, so you're telling me you guys broke up, but she's pregnant?" Dad nodded, running his hand through his hair. "She's been trying to get money out of me ever since the breakup. She says it's mine, but I don't know for sure." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was insane. "Are you going to get a paternity test?" I'm planning to, yeah, he said, looking defeated. But honestly, Clara, that's not the point. What I'm trying to say is, I know I wasn't there for you, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I want to fix things. I want to try. I took a long sip of my coffee, trying to keep my emotions in check. This was a lot to take in. My dad, the guy who'd always been so selfish, was sitting in front of me, admitting he'd screwed up and saying he wanted to fix things. But now, with a possible kid on the way from Candace, it was like I'd stepped into someone else's life. I don't even know where to start, Dad, I said finally. You've been awful to me for years. You let Candace treat me like dirt, and now you want to just fix everything? I know it's not that simple, he said quietly. I'm not asking for a miracle here, Clara. I just want the chance to try. I want to be your dad again. Those words hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to believe him. I really did. I missed the dad I used to have before everything went to hell. But I wasn't sure if that dad even existed anymore. Do you really mean that? I asked, my voice softer now. Because I can't go through this again. I can't let you back in just for you to side with Candace or whoever comes next. He nodded. I know, and I understand. I don't expect you to just trust me right away, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'll go to therapy with you if that's what you want. I'll do anything. I sat back in my chair, stunned. Therapy? My dad had never been the type to talk about feelings, let alone suggest therapy. I don't know, Dad, I said honestly. This is a lot. I need time to think about it. Take all the time you need, he said, sounding relieved that I hadn't just walked out on him. I just wanted you to know that I'm serious. I want to make things right. We finished our coffee in awkward silence after that, neither of us really knowing what to say next. When we left the cafe, he gave me a hug, a real hug, like he actually meant it. I hadn't felt that from him in years. As I walked back to my apartment, my mind was racing. What did this mean? Was he really going to change, or was this just another one of his empty promises? And what about Candace's baby? I didn't have the answers, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe there was hope. Maybe, just maybe, my dad was telling the truth this time. But I wasn't going to hold my breath. Update 2. So after that coffee meeting with Dad, I thought things were finally calming down a little. Like I still didn't know what to make of everything he said, but at least there was no more drama for the moment. But of course, I was wrong. It's like every time I think I'm catching a break, something else comes along to mess things up. It was about 2 weeks after we had coffee. I hadn't reached out to him yet, still needed more time to think about what he said. In the meantime, I was focusing on wedding stuff with Joe. We'd just booked the venue and were going over the guest list when I got this text from my mom. Now, my mom and I don't talk much about my dad unless it's absolutely necessary. So when she sent me this message saying, "We need to talk about your father," I knew something was up. I called her right away and she just dove right into it. "Your father's in trouble, Clara." My heart sank. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, already feeling that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. "He got served papers," she said, her voice tight. "Candace is suing him for child support." Wait, what? I could barely wrap my head around it. But he doesn't even know if the baby's his yet, does he? No, but she's claiming it is and that he abandoned her while she was pregnant. It's a whole mess. I didn't even know what to say. My dad being sued for child support by his ex-girlfriend? It sounded like something out of a bad movie. "Has he gotten the paternity test yet?" I asked. "No, not yet," she said, sounding just as stressed as I was. "He's trying to, but Candace is making things difficult." Great. Just great. Now, not only was my dad trying to fix things with me, but he was also tangled up in this legal mess with Candace. I mean, I should have expected something like this after everything she pulled, but it still hit me hard. I told Joe about it later that night, and he just shook his head. "You can't catch a break with your dad, can you?" "Apparently not," I said, slumping down on the couch. "It's just one thing after another with him. I don't even know what to think anymore." "Do you want to talk to him about it?" Joe asked, always trying to be the rational one. "Maybe see if there's anything you can do to help?" I thought about it for a second, but honestly, what could I do? This was his mess, not mine. "No," I said finally. "I'm staying out of it. I've got enough going on with the wedding and everything." But of course, staying out of it wasn't really an option. The very next day, Dad called me. I was at work when my phone started buzzing, and I saw his name pop up. I debated for a second whether I should answer or not, but something told me I should. "Hey, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Clara, I'm so sorry to bother you at work, but I need your advice." His voice sounded shaky, and that immediately put me on edge. My dad never asked for advice, ever. "What's going on?" I asked. even though I already knew the answer. "It's Candace," he said, and I could practically hear him rubbing his temples on the other end of the line. "She's suing me for child support, and I haven't even gotten the paternity test results yet." I sighed, not really sure what to say. "Have you gotten a lawyer?" "Yeah, but this whole thing is dragging out, and I'm at a loss, Clara. I don't know what to do." Hearing him like that was so weird. The confident, always in control dad I grew up with was gone, and in his place was this guy who seemed completely lost. Part of me felt sorry for him, but another part of me was just exhausted. I didn't want to deal with his problems anymore. "I don't know what to tell you, Dad," I said, rubbing my forehead. "This is between you and Candace." I know, he said quickly, his voice almost desperate. I thought maybe you'd know what to do, since you're so much smarter about these things than I am." Okay, that threw me off. My dad had never complimented me like that before, ever. I didn't know how to respond, so I just sat there in silence for a few seconds, trying to process everything. "I'll think about it," I said finally, "but I can't promise anything." "Thanks, Clara," he said, sounding relieved. "I appreciate it. Really, I do." We hung up, and I just sat there staring at my phone, feeling drained. It was like no matter how hard I tried to distance myself from my dad's mess, he kept pulling me back in. And now, with this whole paternity and child support drama, I was right in the middle of it again. A few days later, I got another call. This time it was my dad again, but he sounded different, almost excited. "I got the paternity test results," he said, his voice shaky. "And?" "She lied," he said, practically shouting into the phone. "The baby's not mine." I nearly dropped my phone. "What?" "The baby's not mine, Clara," he repeated, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and anger. "She's been stringing me along this whole time, making me think I was going to be a father again, and it's all been a lie." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I mean, this was huge. Candace had been lying about the baby being his, dragging him through this whole legal mess, and it turned out it wasn't even his kid. "Are you okay?" I asked, still trying to wrap my head around everything. "I don't know," he admitted. I'm furious, but also relieved. I don't know how to feel." "Have you told her yet?" "Not yet," he said. "I'm going to talk to my lawyer first, make sure everything's in order before I confront her." I could hear the weight lifting off his shoulders, even through the phone. This was a huge relief, but it didn't change everything else that had happened. Candace might not have had his kid, but that didn't erase all the damage she'd done, not just to him, but to me too. "I'm glad it's not yours, Dad," I said, feeling the relief start to settle in. "But you've still got a lot to fix." "I know," he said quietly, "and I'm going to do whatever it takes to fix things with you." Hanging up, I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted, but there was still a lot left unresolved. My dad wasn't off the hook, not by a long shot, but maybe, just maybe, this was the start of him actually getting his life together. I wasn't going to hold my breath, though. Update 3. After that phone call with my dad where he found out the baby wasn't his, I thought things were finally starting to settle down. You know, like maybe this whole mess was wrapping up and we could move on. But I should have known better. Nothing with my dad is ever that simple. It had been a couple of weeks since the paternity test came back, and I hadn't heard much from him. He said he was going to confront Candace with the results and get his lawyer involved, so I figured he was busy sorting all that out. I wasn't exactly dying to check in on him either, to be honest. The whole situation still left a bad taste in my mouth, even if he wasn't going to be a dad again. Then one night, out of nowhere, Dad called. I was in the middle of cooking dinner and Joe was setting the table. When I saw my dad's name pop up on my phone, I almost didn't answer. But something told me this might be important. "Hey, Dad," I said, stirring the pot on the stove, trying to keep it casual. "Clara, I know it's late, but I need to talk to you. Can we meet tomorrow?" His voice sounded weird, like serious but also nervous. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be just another casual catch-up. I sighed, already feeling the stress creep in. "Yeah, sure. Where do you want to meet?" "How about that cafe we went to last time?" he suggested. "Fine, I'll see you there around 10. I didn't want to make this a late-night thing, not with work the next day. "Yeah, that works," he said, and we hung up. The next morning, I wasn't sure what to expect. I mean, the last few times we'd talked, it had been one thing after another, so I was kind of bracing myself for whatever new drama was coming my way. I walked into the cafe, and Dad was already there, sitting at the same table as last time, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Hey," I said, sitting down across from him, trying to read his expression. Hey, he muttered, not even looking up at me. He had his hands wrapped around his coffee cup like it was keeping him grounded. I knew something was off. So, what's going on? I asked, leaning in a little. I confronted Candace, he said, his voice low. She lost it when I showed her the paternity test results. Started screaming, saying I'd ruined her life. That it didn't matter if the baby wasn't mine. I was still responsible because we were together when she got pregnant. I shook my head, not surprised at all. And what did you do? I told her I wasn't paying her a dime, and that I'd see her in court if she tried to push it any further, he said, his jaw tight. She stormed out, and I haven't heard from her since. Well, that's probably a good thing, I said, relieved that she was finally out of the picture. Maybe now you can start fixing your life, Dad. Get things back on track. He nodded, but there was something else going on. I could tell by the way he was avoiding eye contact, the way he kept fidgeting with his coffee cup. There's something else, isn't there? I asked, bracing myself. He sighed, finally looking up at me. Yeah, there is. I waited, my stomach twisting into knots. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, he started, his voice shaky. And I think I need to make some big changes in my life. I've been chasing all the wrong things for years. Candace, all those other women. I was trying to fill a void, and I ended up losing the most important people in my life because of it. I didn't say anything. I just let him keep talking, because I needed to hear where this was going. I've been seeing a therapist, he admitted, and that was when my jaw practically hit the floor. My dad, Mr. I don't need help from anyone. Seeing a therapist? I never saw that coming. She's helped me realize that I've got a lot of things I need to work on, and one of those things is fixing our relationship. I was speechless. Like I didn't even know how to respond. My dad, the guy who'd always been so self-centered and dismissive, was sitting in front of me, telling me he wanted to change. I know I can't undo the damage I've caused, he continued, his voice cracking a little. But I want to try, Clara. I want to be better. For you, for me, for everything. Part of me wanted to believe him. I mean, this was what I'd wanted for years, for him to finally wake up and see the mess he'd made. But another part of me was still skeptical. I'd heard empty promises from him before. Are you serious about this? I asked, narrowing my eyes. Because I can't go through another round of false hope, Dad. If you're gonna do this, you better be committed. I am, he said, and for the first time, I actually believed him. I've already started working on things in therapy. I've even talked to my lawyer about selling the house and moving somewhere smaller. I don't need all that space anymore, and I think it's time for a fresh start. A fresh start. I never thought I'd hear my dad say those words. So, what now? I asked, still not sure how to feel about all of this. I don't know, he admitted, finally taking a sip of his coffee. But I want us to figure it out together. I don't expect everything to be fixed overnight, but I'm willing to put in the work. I sat there processing everything he was saying. This wasn't the same guy who had let Candace walk all over me. This wasn't the same guy who always made everything about himself. This was someone who was actually trying. I guess we can give it a shot, I said finally, feeling a weird mix of relief and caution. He smiled, like, genuinely smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. Thank you, Clara. That means more to me than you know. As we sat there, sipping our coffee and talking about where we'd go from here, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe this was the start of something better. Maybe my dad really could change. But as much as I wanted to believe it, I wasn't going to hold my breath.